What's going on, Tamers? East here. Recently I've been doing a little bit of shopping for the upcoming Knightmon and Ukamon Rebellion, and just in the market for a really good pitchfork, and so I wanted to get your guys' ideas and thoughts here. Amazon recommends the berry and bird gardening and digging fork. Stainless steel, 4 tines, it's got a nice ergonomic ash wood D-grip handle. Really lets you know you mean business when you want to just get in there. Also, it comes with a 15% discount, which is really hard to beat. Anyway, if you guys have any thoughts or comments on this, please let me know if anyone's ever used one of these bad boys in the past, or if you guys recommend something else, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. All jokes aside though, we are in our second week of the BT18 Element Successor set, and the competitive season continues. We've got lots of events from the Evolution Cups happening, as well as the Grand Asia Open qualifiers taking place. Actually, as of the recording of this video, I believe the Grand Asia Open in Indonesia is happening this weekend, and so I'm really looking forward to going back and rewatching those games on stream. But before we focus on that, let's take a look at some event results, a couple of key takeaways, and a closer look at some of the decks that topped over the course of the past week. I think the talk of the town right now is not whether Bandai will update the restricted list, but rather when they're going to do it, and last week's results definitely throw more fuel on the fire. You see this widening gap between decks that take the best advantage of the Ukamon cards in the Ancient Garurumon, as well as Numamon decks at the very top there, and then a huge divide between them and the rest of the decks in the game. Many of the decks introduced in BT18 are still struggling to find a really good footing, maybe with the exception of Purple Hybrid, which has been getting the most amount of experimentation. Seems like outside of that, the only decks that are holding on right now are Knightmon Tribal and Galacticmon. Bit of unfortunate news also, if you watched last week's video, that you saw that I was really excited about the introduction of the new Lucemon deck and how well it would perform, but unfortunately this week it has disappeared from this list entirely. And so while BT18 sports some really interesting effects and new ways to play the game, right now they still feel a little bit dwarfed by previous sets' frontrunners. The first list that we're going to be taking a close look at this week is going to be Ancient Garurumon. Now before this set's release, this deck was already really strong and what I consider to be one of the best decks in the game, but going into BT18, the new cards from this set push this deck even further beyond. The lower end features the notorious Ukamon duo, who allow you to cycle eggs quickly, gain memory, search for the cards you need, all while doing chip damage. While we're at the level 3s, in the past this deck used to run a couple copies of the BT15 Muchomon for additional card draw. However, now they're running a couple copies of the Pokemon from the BT18 set, who gives you search on play, as well as the ability to gain memory whenever one of your Tamers or Digimon digivolves into a hybrid type. Speaking of the hybrids, the BT17 Lobomon plus Kendo Garurumon allow you to warp into the Ancient Garurumon, who can attack, bounce cards to your opponent's hand, bounce their security to their hand, and then recycle one of the hybrids and the tamers at the end of turn. In addition to this, BT18 added the new Lobomon, who allows you to a greater amount of search by not only going through your deck, but now also through your security for hybrids or Tin Warrior type Digimon. The tamers here allow for more uninterrupted offense, with the Koji tamer preventing your opponent from blocking your attacks. The Yui tamer can cycle more Digimon from the raising area to the battle area to attack once per turn, and the addition of the new Takia and Koji tamer gives you Pseudo Bliss by allowing your hybrid Digimon to attack at the end of the turn. I also love the one copy of the cheeky purple matte tamer here, who can take advantage of the Ancient Garurumon dying at the end of the turn. By resting him, you can gain a memory and then choke your opponent out even more. Honestly, this feels like a deck that really just does it all, and it does it all very quickly. If you're looking for a deck with raw power and speed, Ancient Garurumon is a great choice. Knightmon in the past was actually 2 different decks, one being Lord Knightmon, the other being Dark Knightmon. However, in BT18, the Knightmon cards harmonize both of these into one. This deck here is actually a great example, showing off parts of the Dark Knightmon package here at the level 5s, as well as their level 4 pieces in the Skull Knightmon and the Deadly Axemon, as well as cards like the new Lord Knightmon Ace card, who utilizes the Knightmon cards at level 5 as well. One of the really cool things about this deck is actually the level 4 Deadly Axemon searches out cards with Knightmon in their name, which means pretty much everything in the deck is searchable. The level 5 Knightmon cards proper have a variety of uses, whether it's to weaken your opponent's Digimon and then play more of your own Digimon with the promo versions you see here, or force your opponent's Digimon to attack and then buff all of your other Digimon up in the case of the BT18 version. And then once you go wide, you can win with sheer numbers thanks to the new black-purple Lord Knightmon Ace card, who gives all Digimon with less DP than him on the board, including your opponents, collision. And while this kind of war might seem really tough, you can gain the upper hand by using the one copy of the EX male Birdramon here, who makes all of your Knightmon cards unblockable. And while all the level 5s in this deck threaten the Lord Knightmon Ace card, you also have the option of the Shadow Seraphimon Ace, who can weaken opponent's Digimon and then block and redirect attacks. And at the very upper end, Quartzmon is a great addition to this deck, with its abilities not only to suspend Digimon in regular decks, but also Tamers in the hybrid decks, which are seeing a ton of play right now. So if you're looking forward to playing a real war game, look no further than Knightmon Tribal. Each week I allow my champion level and higher YouTube members to vote on decks they like to see featured in these Meta Report videos, and this week over half of them voted to see Gallantmon. If you'd like to vote on decks that you want to see featured in these Meta Report videos, along with other perks and bonuses, consider becoming a YouTube channel member as well. Again, I want to give a huge thank you to all the folks who help support the channel, and with that, let's take a look at Gallimon. Now this fully blinged out Gallimon deck coming out of Korea utilizes some old faces with some new strategies. This mostly takes the form in the level 4 Growlmons from the EX3 set that you see here. He lets you destroy one of your Digimon to give him Sec +1 for the turn, which might seem kind of rough, but if you combo him with the EX3 War Growlmon, you get their body on board for free. So in the early game, you can do something like play one of the Growlmon that lets you search, and then in the late game, you can play one of the Growlmon who gives rush whenever you have 20 or more cards in your trash between you and your opponent. You can also use the War Growlmon here flexibly to play down the Takia Tamers, because you'll notice that this deck actually doesn't run any of the level 4 Growlmon cards that do that for you. And the upper end utilizes some familiar faces with the BT12 Gallimon, who lets you trash security and then delete Digimon, alongside the BT9 Gallimon X, who does essentially the same thing, all the while unsuspending. And with this accumulation of cards in the trash from your opponent's side of the board as well as your side of the board, you can utilize the BT13 Gallimon here for quick checks with rush. While this deck does focus mostly on offense, it does have a few defensive tools in the Megadramon Ace here for big destruction and counterplay, as well as the BT18 Gallimon, which you see here, which gives blocker and some decent destruction as well. An interesting note that the author for this deck made on Twitter was that while the deck does use 3 Gallimon Crimson modes here, 2 of the Crimson mode aces, and then 1 of the old EX2 Crimson mode, he mentioned that he used this one exactly 0 times, so it might be useful to either replace this with another Crimson mode or something else. And to all the Gallimon savants out there, if you do think it's worth cutting, what would you add instead? With that, we're going to bring week 2 of the BT18 Element Successor meta report to a close. You know, it feels a little unfortunate that some of the newer cards are outpaced by some of the older stuff out there. However, there's still a lot to explore and dig into. Just as an example, the other night I was about to put my head to my pillow. I was like, wait a second. Green Hybrid can use the old JP Shibayama to get cost -1 on evolves. With lots of little intricacies like that still floating out there, I think there's still a lot to dig into for the BT18 set. I'm also really looking forward to watching the games at the Indonesian Grand Asia Open later on stream this week, so stay tuned. Anyways folks, I'm gonna get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.